It happened during Sunday brunch, and I remember the clink of silverware, the scent of baked cinnamon apples, and the low hum of conversation before the bomb dropped. Brielle had invited her clique, those heavily accessorized, overconfident girls who carried around judgment like designer handbags. Clarissa, my wife, had gone all out. She wore that emerald green dress she usually reserved for charity galas and had her hair done up in a neat twist, the kind her mother said made her look respectable and rich. She smiled that careful smile she wore around people who might be watching. I was in the background, as usual, setting the table, refilling drinks, making sure the orange juice didn't run out. Just Ezra, the helpful husband. The brunch was halfway through, people laughing and sipping mimosas, when Brielle tapped her champagne flute with her spoon. Ting-ting. That sound sliced through the air like a warning shot. Everyone turned. She stood with a dramatic air, like she was about to give a toast. "I'm sorry," she said, placing her hand to her chest with faux remorse. "But I can't keep this in anymore." The room hushed. Ezra stole my necklace. The one Grandma gave me. Just like that. No build-up. No explanation. Just an accusation launched into the air like a grenade. I blinked, thinking maybe I'd misheard her. A laugh nearly bubbled up, because surely this was a joke. But her eyes were serious, wide with stage pain, and the corners of her mouth pulled into a subtle smirk she tried to hide. The silence after her words was thick. Everyone looked at me, and then I heard the sharp inhale from my right. "Clarissa," she gasped, and I saw the flicker of something dark pass through her eyes. Disbelief, maybe, or was it betrayal? Then she stood, without a single word to me, without a moment of pause. She crossed the room and slapped me across the face. Hard. The kind of slap that echoes, because it's not just about the impact. It's about the message. The sting didn't hurt as much as the heat that flooded my chest. I stared at her, jaw tight, my cheek already beginning to throb. "You've embarrassed me in front of my family," she said, her voice low but seething. "Get out." Not, "What's going on?" Not, "Tell me the truth." No investigation. No inquiry. Just exile. I looked at Brielle, who stood tall with faux righteousness, and I almost said something. Almost dragged everything into the light. But I didn't. Because what was the point? No one in that room knew what I had been doing behind the scenes. None of them saw the late-night logins to Brielle's school portal, paying her tuition out of my pocket. No one noticed that the rent always hit the account. Even when Clarissa forgot to send her half. No one thanked me when the lights stayed on, or when the fridge stayed stocked, or when Clarissa's car mysteriously got fixed that time she couldn't afford repairs. All of it, silent. I did it for them. For family. For love. Because I thought loyalty meant covering the cracks before they spread. But now here I was, accused of stealing by the same person whose degree I was quietly funding, and betrayed by the woman who wore the ring I bought with the money I didn't have. I didn't defend myself. I didn't argue. I didn't yell or cry or beg. I simply walked out. No suitcase. No boxes. No plans. Just my laptop and my wallet. I walked past the buffet table like a ghost, through the foyer that still smelled faintly of citrus polish, out the front door into the sunlight that felt too bright for a moment like this. The sound of brunch laughter resumed behind me like nothing had happened, like I was never really there. I got into my car and sat in silence for a long time. I didn't call anyone. I didn't scream into the steering wheel. I just stared out the windshield, letting the betrayal settle over me like a second skin. People always imagine that betrayal feels like a knife. Sudden, sharp, bloody. But for me, it felt like being erased. Like all the years I spent making sure their lives ran smoothly were nothing more than background noise. Like I was just the man who poured the orange juice while they clinked their glasses. That night, I drove until the city lights gave way to silence, ending up outside Mason's apartment. My oldest friend, a man who had seen me in every season of my life, graduation, marriage, heartbreak. He opened the door and didn't ask questions, just took one look at me and said, "You look like hell." I nodded. "Feel worse." He handed me a drink, pointed to the couch, and said, "Crash here. Tomorrow, we figure it out." I stayed on that couch, staring at the ceiling, my cheek still warm from the slap. I didn't know it then, but that slap was the beginning. The match that would light everything. Because they thought I would go quietly. They thought I'd slink away like a kicked dog, tail tucked, pride shattered. But what they didn't realize, what they never cared enough to learn, is that I don't break. I burn. And sometimes, when the right man burns, he takes the whole house with him. I didn't go back to the house. Didn't even glance in the rearview mirror as I pulled away from that neighborhood with its trimmed hedges and polite pretense. I knew if I stepped through that door again, even for a toothbrush or pair of socks, I'd be walking into a trap wrapped in apologies I didn't trust. Clarissa would say all the right words in the wrong tone, and Brielle would hide behind another lie, counting on the fact that no one ever questioned her too hard. I didn't want anything from that house. Not a single thing. Everything in it suddenly felt like it belonged to a life I no longer claimed. Mason lived on the 4th floor of a building that had seen better days. The elevator didn't work half the time, and the hallway always smelled vaguely like someone was overcooking cabbage. But the moment he opened the door, none of that mattered. I stepped into his living room, dropped my laptop bag on the floor, and exhaled a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. He didn't ask for the full story. Mason never did. He just poured 2 glasses of bourbon, handed me one, and said, "Sometimes people don't deserve explanations." I nodded slowly, feeling the truth of that settle into my bones. It was strange how freeing it felt to say nothing. No defense, no justification, just silence. Clarissa had made her choice, and I'd made mine. But once the silence settled in, it brought with it something else. A cold clarity. I stretched out on Mason's couch that night, staring at the ceiling fan spinning above me, and the math started doing itself in my head. Every dollar, every sacrifice, every month I paid the rent when Clarissa said she was a little short. Every tuition payment I made for Brielle, thinking it would give her a shot at something better. Every grocery run, every electric bill. Every little unspoken favor disguised as love. It had all added up. And now? They'd wiped it away with one slap and a lie. Something hardened in me as I lay there. Something old, maybe. A part of me I'd buried under all the yes, dears, and budget spreadsheets and late-night account transfers. A part of me that remembered how to stop bleeding for people who wouldn't hand me a Band-Aid. I got up at 2:14 a.m. and opened my laptop. I sat at Mason's little dining table, the glow of the screen flickering across my face, and I started pulling back the threads. First, the tuition portal, Brielle's university login. I still had access because she never bothered to change the password. I found the auto-pay setting and disabled it. The next installment was due in 3 weeks. Let them figure it out. Next, Clarissa's rent. I'd set up an automatic transfer that covered our apartment lease each month. I canceled it. Deleted the schedule. She could call her landlord and explain herself. Then came the utilities, electricity, water, gas, Wi-Fi. All of it was tied to my name, my card, my credit. I canceled each auto payment, made sure no upcoming bills would clear. If they wanted me gone, they didn't get to keep my wallet. I moved through the accounts like I was erasing fingerprints. Not out of spite, out of principle. They treated me like I was disposable. Now they'd see what happened when the man they depended on quietly removed himself from the equation. I didn't send any warning. No messages. No dramatic exit speech. I let the silence speak. And it did. Loudly. 3 days passed before the first message came. From Clarissa. Just 2 sentences. Did you forget to pay the internet again? Brielle's finals are this week. No greeting. No question mark. Just accusation wrapped in passive aggression. I didn't respond. The next day, another message. The water's not working. The landlord's calling. What's going on? Still no, Ezra, can we talk? Or can we fix this? Just complaints. I muted her number. Then came her mom. That woman had never once texted me a thank you in the 5 years I kept her daughter's fridge stocked and her rent paid. Now suddenly she had the nerve to call 3 times in a row. I didn't answer. And then Brielle. Oh, Brielle. She had the audacity to send a voice note. Hey, Ezra, I know things are weird right now, but could you, fix the bank thing real quick? I have a project due, and I can't focus if I'm broke. Thanks. No apology. No ownership. Just more expectation. Entitlement wrapped in faux sweetness. I played that message twice, just to let it sink in. This was the girl who accused me of stealing. Lied with a straight face. Watched me get slapped and thrown out like garbage. And now she wanted my help? I deleted the message and blocked her number. When Mason got home that night and saw me sitting on the couch with my laptop closed and a rare smile on my face, he raised an eyebrow. What's that look? I finally unplugged. From what? I looked up at him. From people who only love you when the power's on and the bills are paid. He gave a low whistle and poured us each a drink. Took you long enough. That night, I slept better than I had in years. No midnight texts asking for favors. No quiet resentment curling in my gut while I watched the women I supported take everything I gave and act like I owed it to them. The next morning, I made breakfast for Mason and me. Eggs, toast, nothing fancy. He clapped me on the back like a proud brother. I smiled, but my mind was already moving, calculating next steps. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to destroy them, but I wasn't going to keep funding my own humiliation. They wanted to see what life looked like without me. I'd let them, and they'd learn, bit by bit, unpaid bill by unpaid bill, just how much I'd been holding together. Not because I'd tell them, because they'd feel the difference when I was no longer there. And silence. Silence would be the loudest thing they ever heard. It started with the Wi-Fi. 5 days after I left, I was standing in line at the bodega down the block from Mason's apartment, trying to decide if I wanted to settle for instant coffee or walk another 15 minutes to the place with actual espresso, when my phone buzzed. A text from Clarissa. Did you forget to pay the internet again? Brielle's finals are this week. Not, hi. Not, can we talk? Just that flat, clipped tone I knew too well, cold, irritated, completely detached from the reality of what had happened. As if I'd simply misplaced a payment and not been accused of theft and slapped across the face in front of a room full of strangers. I stared at the message for a while before locking my screen. I let it sit. The funny part? She didn't even realize the account wasn't under her name. That apartment's high-speed fiber connection, the same one Brielle used to stream movies and study, was paid out of my checking account, automatically, every month for 3 years. She never once asked how the bills got handled. She just expected the world to keep spinning. I paid for my coffee, the cheap one, and took the long walk anyway. Cold air cleared my head better than caffeine ever could. By the time I got back to Mason's place, there were 2 more messages. The water's not working. The landlord's calling. What's going on? Can you please just fix this stuff, Ezra? This is ridiculous. I didn't reply. I didn't even type out a draft. That urge. The one that used to twitch in my fingers, the need to explain, to defend, to clear up the misunderstanding, was gone. Or maybe it had burned out, right alongside my willingness to fund people who treated me like a line item on their budget. The next day, her mother called. Now that was Rich. This was the same woman who barely spoke to me at family gatherings, who once asked if I planned to do anything real with my life after I'd started my small business, who used to hand Clarissa envelopes filled with passive-aggressive advice disguised as handwritten notes. And suddenly, she was blowing up my phone like I was the family's only lifeline. I didn't pick up. Let it ring. Watched the name dance across my screen while I ate leftovers on the couch and Mason half-listened to some NBA recap on the TV. Then came Brielle. Of course it did. Her message was a voice note. I should have known better, but curiosity made me press play. Hey, Ezra. I know things are awkward right now, or whatever, but can you fix the bank thing real quick? I can't register for my lab because the payment bounced and it's super urgent. Thanks. I stared at my phone like it had insulted me. Super urgent. This girl had stood in the middle of that living room and lied to an entire group of people. She'd weaponized an heirloom and accused me of stealing, knowing full well it was fiction, and now she wanted a favor? It was almost impressive how easily she moved from betrayal to expectation, like nothing in between mattered. I saved the voice note. Then I blocked her number. Later that night, Mason came home from work, kicked off his shoes, and found me on the couch watching a nature documentary, something about wolves. I didn't even know I was watching it until he said, "You trying to become one of them?" I smirked. Maybe. He flopped down beside me with a bag of takeout. Everything okay? Clarissa's spiraling, I said casually, like I was talking about the weather. Water's off. Wi-Fi's dead. Brielle's begging. Her mom called. Wow. He whistled low. All it took was you walking away for their world to short-circuit. They never realized how much I was doing until I stopped doing it. Mason handed me a box of lo mein. People like that never do. And he was right. You give and give and give, and they never stop to think about the hands feeding them. But the moment you pull back, suddenly you're selfish. You're cold. You're the problem. I wasn't surprised when the landlord emailed me. Apparently, Clarissa had tried to claim she never knew she wasn't the primary leaseholder. That's because I was. Every renewal, every late-night emergency repair call, every maintenance fee, I handled it. Quietly. She'd text me from brunch saying, ugh, the sink's leaking again, and I'd have it fixed before she came back. No? That sink could flood the whole place for all I cared. Still, I was methodical. I emailed the landlord back, formally relinquishing my financial responsibility for the apartment effective immediately. I attached a notice of separation, not that it was legally required. I was done. The next few days were blissfully silent. No more texts. No more guilt traps. Just space. And then came the knock. Not on the door, on my digital doorstep. A DM on Instagram. It was Clarissa. I clicked it before I could talk myself out of it. I can't believe you're doing this. This is petty, Ezra. You know how hard things have been for us. Us. Like we were still in us. I typed a reply. One line. You made your choice. This is the consequence. Then I deleted it. Not because it wasn't true, but because she didn't deserve the grace of a response. Instead, I opened my financial spreadsheet, the one they never saw, never cared about, and moved everything else. Savings into a separate account. Business income rerouted. Subscriptions canceled. It was like shedding a skin I never asked to wear. That evening, I sat on the fire escape outside Mason's apartment, sipping tea and watching the city lights flicker. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel invisible. I didn't feel like a man trapped in the background of his own life. I wasn't Clarissa's provider. I wasn't Brielle's emergency ATM. I was just Ezra. And that was finally enough. 10 days after I walked out of that house and left everything behind, I got a message that changed the entire game. It was just past 8 p.m., and Mason and I had just returned from grabbing dinner at this hole-in-the-wall taco place a few blocks down. We were sitting on his beat-up sectional couch, half watching a rerun of some cooking competition show, when my phone buzzed on the coffee table. I almost ignored it. I'd been ignoring a lot lately: calls, texts, notifications. If it wasn't work-related or a random meme from Mason, I didn't care. But something made me check this one. It was from Ava, Clarissa's neighbor's daughter. We weren't close, just a polite hello and wave kind of connection. She was maybe 20, maybe younger, the kind of girl who always had a ring light clipped to her phone and was forever filming content for some channel or another. She used to babysit Clarissa's cousins from time to time and was often over at the house. Her message was simple. Hey Ezra, I think you should see this. And attached, a voice recording. I frowned. Mason leaned over, catching the look on my face. Who's that? Ava, I muttered, already hitting play. At first, all I could hear was background noise, birds chirping, someone laughing in the distance, a door creaking. I figured it was a mistake. But then the voices came into focus, just clear enough to punch me in the chest. Brielle's voice. Of course, I planted it. Ezra's too boring anyway. I wanted Clarissa to see he's not perfect. Plus, he's not even blood. He can leave. Silence fell around me like a shroud. I froze, phone in hand, the words echoing louder and louder in my ears even after the clip ended. Mason had gone completely still beside me. Play that again, he said. I did. This time I heard it all. The smugness in her tone, the way she dropped my name like it was trash she was tired of stepping over. No regret. No hesitation. Just raw, unfiltered malice. Clarissa's face flashed in my mind. The way she slapped me. The way her eyes didn't even search mine for truth. She didn't question the story, just accepted it because it fit a version of me she didn't bother to understand anymore. I let the phone drop into my lap and stared at the ceiling for a long moment. My chest was tight, not with pain, at least not the kind I'd felt before. This was something sharper, focused, a storm forming behind my ribs. She admitted it. I said, more to myself than to Mason. She really said it. Mason exhaled through his nose. She said it on tape. That's what matters. I picked up the phone again and messaged Ava. Where did you get this? She replied almost immediately. I was shooting a TikTok in the backyard. My mic picked up their convo on accident. Didn't realize until I was editing. Thought you should know. Then, another message. I already sent it to the University Ethics Board. Brielle's a menace. I'm sorry. I didn't know all this was happening. I stared at the screen. Of all the people in Clarissa's circle, the last person I expected help from was a Gen Z neighbor girl with a YouTube channel and neon nails. And yet, here she was doing more for my name in a single file than Clarissa ever had. Thank you, Ava. For real. She sent a heart emoji and a thumbs up. No drama. No grandstanding. Just a digital witness who chose truth over comfort. Mason leaned forward, grabbing his drink from the table. So what now? I shook my head slowly. Now. I stopped letting them own the narrative. I forwarded the audio to a backup drive. I didn't want to post it online yet. This wasn't about public humiliation. Not yet. But I needed it documented, validated, protected. Because even the truth, once it's in your hands, has to be handled with precision. Like a match near dry timber. The next morning, I received an email from Brielle's university. Standard boilerplate language, but it confirmed Ava wasn't lying. The school had received a formal complaint, and Brielle was being summoned for a disciplinary hearing related to misconduct and character defamation. I sat back in my chair and smiled, just a little. Not because I wanted revenge, but because, finally, someone other than me had the facts. Brielle had poisoned the well with lies, and now she was going to drink from it. Clarissa hadn't reached out since her last barrage of texts. I half expected a dramatic message, some grand accusation of me setting her sister up. But nothing came, which made me wonder. Did she know? Had she heard the recording too? Or was she still clinging to the version of the story where I was the villain and Brielle was just the poor victim of theft? I didn't know which would hurt more, realizing she believed the lie, or realizing she didn't care enough to correct it. Later that week, Mason and I were walking past the corner deli when his phone buzzed. He checked it, eyebrows raising. Dude, you just went semi-viral. What? He handed me his phone. Someone on a college forum had posted the transcript of the audio clip, anonymously. Roommate caught this while filming in the backyard. This kind of setup should be illegal. Comments were flooding in. This dude deserves an apology and a check. She really said, not even blood, like she's on a reality show. Protect Ezra at all costs. I stared at the screen, a strange mix of emotions churning in my gut. I hadn't asked for attention. I didn't want to be a trending topic. But seeing strangers stand up for me in ways the people closest to me never had, that did something. Lit something. Later that night, as I lay on the couch staring at the darkened ceiling, the thought returned like a whisper. What if this wasn't just the end of something? What if it was the start? For the first time in weeks, I wasn't just reacting. I was ready. Ready to reclaim my name. Ready to step out of the silence. Because now, I had proof. And with it, the power to tell the truth on my own terms. The collapse didn't come with a bang. It started with whispers. Unseen, unheard tremors. Quiet at first, but I could feel them. Like a building that looked fine from the street, but had termites in its foundation. I didn't need to push it. I just had to stop holding it up. The morning after the recording made its way through the college forum, I checked my email out of habit. Among the usual spam and work alerts, one message stood out. An official note from Brielle's university. Subject: Notice of disciplinary action. Brielle Holloway. Just reading the subject line felt like oxygen. I opened it slowly, half expecting some kind of slap on the wrist. But no, this was serious. The university had reviewed the recording, verified its authenticity, and confirmed it had been recorded in a public setting. Brielle was being suspended pending further review. Grounds: academic misconduct and character defamation. They didn't even need me to testify. Ava's submission and the timing of the audio had been enough. And just like that, Brielle's spotless reputation, carefully curated through Instagram filters and honor roll posts, cracked. I didn't smile. Not right away. Instead, I sat in the living room of Mason's apartment and just let it wash over me. Not joy. Not revenge. Relief. Mason walked out of the kitchen in boxers and a hoodie, yawning as he held a cereal bowl. You look like someone just gave you back your name. I nodded, holding up the email. They suspended her. He whistled low, set the bowl down, and clapped me on the shoulder. Told you. Truth always crawls out, brother. Might take its time, but it's stubborn. I leaned back on the couch and stared at the ceiling, remembering Clarissa's eyes when she slapped me. That flash of disgust, of humiliation. It played like a loop in my brain sometimes, usually when I was drifting off. But now, I finally had something to disrupt the replay. A new scene. Her sister caught in the web she spun, tangled in her own ego. By the end of the day, the group chat I was once a silent member of, that Holloway family circle, lit up like fireworks. I still had access, mostly because Clarissa forgot to remove me. I should have left ages ago, but something made me stay. Maybe curiosity, maybe vindication. Clarissa's mother, Marlene, was already in damage control mode. Marlene. This is clearly manipulated. Anyone can fake audio. Why are people believing this? Uncle Roy, university confirmed it's authentic, Marlene. They're not suspending students for fun. Aunt Dina. Wait, is this about Ezra? Oh no. I knew something was off that day. Marlene, he set her up. I'm sure of it. He always acted so perfect. Clarissa, stop. That word hit harder than I expected. She'd been quiet for days. Since the water stopped running, since the groceries stopped arriving, since the Wi-Fi died and the lights flickered like they, too, were unsure if they belonged in that house anymore. Clarissa, I don't know what to believe anymore. But Ezra didn't steal anything. I never should have. I never asked questions. It wasn't an apology, but it was the closest she'd come. I exited the group chat after that, left them to stew in the mess they made. Mason and I sat out on his fire escape that night, watching the skyline swallow the last traces of daylight. The air was cold, sharp against my skin, but I didn't mind. I needed the sting. It made everything feel real. You ever think about going back? Mason asked, keeping his voice casual. I shook my head. To what? A house I paid for but never felt at home in. A marriage where my silence was currency and my kindness was mistaken for weakness? He nodded slowly, as if he already knew my answer. I'm not bitter, I said, more to myself than to him. I'm done trying to make people see me when they're committed to looking away. He passed me a beer, then stopped looking back. I took a sip, letting the bitterness of it settle on my tongue. The next day, Clarissa texted me. Not angry, not demanding, just this. I didn't know. About the tuition, or the rent, or any of it. I stared at the screen for a long time. That part hurt the most. Not the slap, not even the accusation. The ignorance. She lived beside me, slept next to me, shared bills, meals, memories. And still, she didn't know. Because she never asked. Because it was easier to let me carry the weight and resent me in silence than to ask what I was carrying. I didn't reply. That evening, Mason came home from work with Chinese takeout and a crooked grin. Guess who couldn't pay their electric bill this month? I raised an eyebrow. He held up his phone. Clarissa's mom was at the grocery store. Card declined. She caused a scene. Apparently, the lights are out at their place. Candles and flashlights kind of vibe. I didn't laugh, but I did feel something close to justice. They thought I was just the man in the background. The quiet husband who kept his head down and didn't speak up at family dinners. The guy who never raised his voice, never caused waves. But I was the current, the one keeping everything moving. And now that I'd withdrawn, the house of cards was shaking. I got a call the next day from the landlord. He wanted to confirm that I was no longer covering rent. I said yes. I didn't ask what Clarissa was doing to stay afloat. I didn't want to know. Mason looked at me that night and said, "You lit the fuse, brother. Now let it burn." And I nodded. Not because I wanted destruction, but because I finally understood something. Sometimes the only way to rebuild is to let everything that no longer serves you collapse. Opportunity doesn't always come dressed in a tailored suit or announced through a neatly worded email. Sometimes it slips into your life like a quiet knock on a door you forgot existed. For me, it arrived on a Tuesday morning, in the form of Mr. Donovan leaning against the glass wall of my shared workspace at the firm. "You've been through something," he said plainly, not as a question, but as a statement. The man always had a way of cutting through the fluff and landing straight in the truth. I paused, blinking up at him from behind my laptop. "Is it that obvious?" He didn't smile, just folded his arms and nodded slightly. "You've been different these past few weeks. Focused, sharper, like someone took the noise away." He wasn't wrong. After walking out of Clarissa's life and everything that came with it, I'd found myself working with a kind of ruthless clarity I hadn't felt in years. No more splitting my energy between other people's messes. No more running damage control at home. Just me and the work. And the work had responded in kind. Mr. Donovan stepped into the office and closed the door behind him. "We're opening a satellite location downtown. High-rise floor. We need someone to lead it." I blinked. "You're offering me the lead?" "I'm offering you a start," he said, his voice low. "You've earned it. And it's time people saw what you're really capable of." I didn't say yes right away. I let the words settle. Then I nodded, slow and sure. "Then I'll take it." 2 weeks later, I stood in the lobby of a pristine glass tower, key card in my hand, elevator music humming low behind me. The air smelled like ambition and eucalyptus, and for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt like I was breathing on my own. The office on the 15th floor was still being outfitted. paint drying, furniture being arranged, but my name was already on the door. Ezra Holloway, project director. I ran my fingers across the frosted lettering, not for vanity, but for confirmation. I was here, not as someone's husband, not as someone's fallback, but as myself. The apartment came next. A modest one-bedroom on the same block as the new office. Clean lines, huge windows, a view of the skyline that made mornings feel like possibilities instead of obligations. I signed the lease in silence. No shared pens, no second name on the dotted line. This space, it was mine. I remember the first night I slept there. I didn't have much. A mattress on the floor, one suitcase, a used coffee maker Mason gifted me. No art on the walls. No throw pillows Clarissa would have bought to tie the room together. Just peace. The kind that wraps around your shoulders like a quiet friend and whispers, "You're safe now." I didn't miss the noise. I didn't miss Clarissa's perfume lingering on shared pillows, or Brielle's footsteps stomping through the hallways like she owned every square inch. I didn't miss watching my money disappear into convenience and entitlement. What I had now, silence and freedom. The first weekend in the new place, I walked to a local bookstore and picked up a worn paperback on finding clarity after trauma. The cashier smiled at me, not because she recognized me, but because I smiled first. That interaction alone felt different. Authentic. No one here knew what I'd been through. No one looked at me like a prop in someone else's play. I was just Ezra, a man in a city apartment, a man with his own lease, his own job, his own peace. A few days later, Mr. Donovan stopped by the new office. He walked the space slowly, nodding as he moved through the rooms. "You've got an eye for structure," he said. "This place feels like it has a spine." "Trying to build something solid," I replied, and he gave a rare smile. "Well, you've got full reign. Run it how you see fit." That night, I stayed late. Not out of pressure, but out of purpose. The sun dipped behind the city, and the office glowed with the kind of warmth that comes when a space starts to recognize its owner. Around 10 p.m., I stepped out onto the small terrace that faced west. Cars moved below like veins, the heartbeat of a city that never really stopped. I stood there for a while, breathing it in. The distance, the independence, the sheer fact that not a single person here expected me to shrink. My phone buzzed. It was Clarissa. I didn't answer. I didn't even open the message. I simply watched it fade into the notification bar, another echo from a past that didn't belong here anymore. Mason came by the next day, carrying a housewarming gift, an absurdly large lava lamp. "You serious?" I asked, smirking. "Hey, your place was way too adult. Needed something weird. Keep you grounded." He stayed for dinner. We ate on the floor, Chinese takeout cartons between us, the city buzzing beyond the windows. We didn't talk about Clarissa, or Brielle, or any of it. We talked about what came next. "You gonna date again?" he asked. "Eventually," I said. "But right now, I'm dating peace." He raised his box and a toast. "To peace. And to downtown moves." I tapped mine against his. "To no more background rolls." Later that night, I sat in my new place, lights dimmed, the lava lamp casting a slow pulse across the room. My laptop was open, a blank document glowing in front of me. I didn't know what I was writing yet. Maybe a journal, maybe a story. But the first line came easy. Sometimes you don't have to burn bridges. You just have to stop carrying the wood. And I smiled, because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't surviving. I was becoming. 2 weeks into my new job, just as I was settling into the rhythm of peace, the past found me again. This time through an unexpected voice. It was a Wednesday afternoon. I had just wrapped a meeting with the downtown design team when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I normally wouldn't answer, too many spam calls lately, but something about the area code tugged at my curiosity. It was from the same town Clarissa's family was from. I stepped into the small break room and answered. "Hello." A pause, then a voice I hadn't heard in years, soft but unmistakably firm. "Ezra, this is Thea, Clarissa's aunt." I blinked, then stepped further away from the door. "Aunt Thea?" She gave a dry chuckle. "Didn't think I still existed, huh? Don't worry. They don't mention me much." I hadn't seen her since the Thanksgiving dinner 2 years ago where she'd quietly pulled me aside, complimented my patience, and said, "Keep your receipts, sweetheart. You might need them one day." Back then, I thought she was just being dramatic. Now, her words sounded prophetic. "I heard about what happened," she said, her voice softening. And I think it's time you knew something. I stayed silent, listening. There was a slight rustle, like papers being shuffled. Clarissa's grandmother, she said slowly, set aside a grant for Clarissa and her future spouse. A trust, technically. $65,000. My breath caught. I never heard a word about that. Of course you didn't, she said flatly. Because Marlene and Robert, her parents, claimed it before you even got married. Told the trustee there were urgent medical bills, and that you and Clarissa consented. They used it. Bought that new kitchen. Took that cruise to Spain. The whole thing. I sat down on a nearby stool, heart thudding. Wait, you're saying the money was meant for us? All of it, she said. But they used legal loopholes and a willing lawyer to move it early. Clarissa didn't know, at least not at first. I'm not even sure she knows now. But I kept the paperwork. I warned them not to mess with it. Your name was on the file, Ezra. You were entitled to half of that, if not more. I exhaled, slow and stunned. That cruise Clarissa kept showing off on Instagram. The marble countertops she bragged about. The new washer and dryer. The upgrades they praised themselves for. That was my money. Not the metaphorical kind. Not emotional labor or invisible support. Real dollars. A future meant to be built between us, taken, quietly, before it ever reached my hands. I can send you everything, Thea said. The contact for the trustee lawyer, too. You have every right to file a claim. I know they'll deny it, try to bury it under guilt or family unity talk, but they don't own the truth, Ezra. You do. My throat tightened. Why are you doing this? There was a pause. Because I saw what they did to you. I saw you disappear a little more every time they needed you to stay silent. And because I know what it feels like to be pushed out of your own life. We talked for another 15 minutes. She explained how the trust was structured, how Clarissa's grandmother had insisted it go to the couple together, not just her granddaughter. The lawyer had a copy of the original intent letter. Thea had a notarized statement from the time of the withdrawal. By the end of the call, she'd emailed it all to me. I'm not doing this for revenge, she said before hanging up. I'm doing it so you can rebuild with what's rightfully yours. I stared at my screen for a long time after she hung up. Documents loaded one by one. Legal jargon. Financial statements. Withdrawal forms signed with dates that aligned perfectly with the timeline I remembered, new appliances, luxury vacation, sudden upgrades without explanation. That night, I sat in my apartment with every light off, the city glowing outside my window, and let the reality sink in. They stole from me, and not just emotionally or symbolically. They stole money I didn't even know existed. They smiled in my face while they used it. Let me pay rent. Let me fill the fridge. Let me cover tuition while they quietly cashed out on a future they never planned to share with me. I forwarded the documents to a lawyer friend from college, Samir, who owed me a favor. He called within hours. Ezra, you've got a strong claim, he said. The letter of intent alone is damning. The trustee's original notes support your inclusion. And since they bypassed you with fraudulent consent, it's not just unethical, it's potentially criminal. 3 weeks later, the claim was filed. And another 2 after that, the settlement came through. $65,000. Transferred directly into a new account I opened in my name alone. No strings. No shared access. No splitting it down the middle. Mine. I didn't celebrate with champagne. Didn't post anything. I didn't text Clarissa or her parents or rub it in anyone's face. I sat quietly in my living room, watching the numbers load into my banking app, and I felt something shift in my chest. Validation. They thought I was just a placeholder. The man who picked up the tab. The one who asked for nothing and therefore must need nothing. But now, I had something no one could deny. Something they couldn't slap away or call manipulative. Proof. The next morning, I sent Aunt Thea a bouquet of deep purple orchids, her favorite, according to the family dinner I still remembered. The card simply read, "Thank you for reminding me who I was." Ezra, she replied with a photo of the flowers on her windowsill and a message I've kept pinned in my phone to this day. It's not about revenge. It's about returning to yourself. Welcome home. And just like that, the last piece of their control over me shattered. I was free. Financially. Emotionally. Legally. And for the first time, I had more than just peace. I had power. Freedom, once you get a taste of it, makes you hungry for more than silence. At first, I just wanted to escape, to vanish, recover, rebuild. But peace does something strange when it finally settles. It nudges you forward. Makes you ask, what now? I was sitting on my balcony one Sunday morning, the city quiet under the haze of early light. A cup of coffee in one hand, the other scrolling aimlessly through my phone. My bank account had just ticked past a number I never thought I'd see, not from the trust money alone, but from the side consulting gigs I'd picked up since the move downtown. I was stable, secure. No one depended on me. No one drained me. But that morning, as steam curled from my mug, I realized something else. I wasn't invisible anymore. People had started reaching out, strangers from college, old colleagues, even high school acquaintances. Some of them messaged me after word of the university suspension got around. Others had seen my LinkedIn update about the downtown office. But most reached out after reading a short post I made one night at 2 a.m., a post I almost didn't share. It was simple, just a black screen with white text. I was accused of theft by someone I paid tuition for, slapped in front of people I used to call family. And somehow, I still felt guilty. Until I didn't. Until I stopped whispering. That post got shared over 10,000 times in 3 days. Men I'd never met messaged me, same here, man. She drained me and left. I thought I was the only one. Please, how did you move on? It wasn't just men. Women, too. People who'd been erased, used, gaslit, discarded. And with each message, I realized something deeper. I hadn't just been surviving a personal betrayal, I'd walked through a fire most people don't talk about. Because when you're the quiet one, the provider, the emotionally stable support beam, no one expects you to burn. And when you do, no one wants to look at the ashes. So I decided to talk about it. Not through passive posts or rants, but intentionally. I launched a podcast, Built to Burn, Recovering from Family Scars. Mason thought I was kidding when I pitched it over dinner. He nearly choked on his burger. You? A podcast host? I shrugged. Why not? It's cheaper than therapy. But it wasn't a joke. I bought a decent mic, cleared out a small corner of my apartment, pinned soundproofing foam to the walls, kept the lava lamp for good luck. And on a quiet Thursday night, I hit record. Welcome to Built to Burn. I began, my voice steadier than I expected. My name's Ezra. And this is for the quiet ones. The ones who get erased. The ones who paid the bills, showed up, stayed loyal, and got labeled the problem anyway. I paused. Let the silence settle before I said it. This is for the man who got slapped in front of strangers after being accused of stealing a necklace by someone whose tuition he'd paid for. I told the story, not with rage, but with clarity. I didn't name names. I didn't curse or scream. I just laid it out, the brunch, the accusation, the silence, the exit, the unraveling that followed, the proof, the piece. I uploaded it. Didn't expect much. Within 48 hours, it hit 40,000 downloads. Emails flooded in. Comments. Requests for interviews. Some people sent voice notes crying. Others offered their own stories. One man's wife had told their church he was abusive to cover her own affair. Another woman had supported her brother's education for 6 years, only to be labeled greedy when she asked to be repaid. The more I listened, the more I understood. What had happened to me wasn't rare. It was just rarely spoken. So I made more episodes. Financial gaslighting and the invisible wallet. When love is just leverage. The lie that got me slapped. That last one exploded. It went viral. TikTok edits, reaction videos, YouTubers dissecting the story like a crime scene. It was strange hearing my voice clipped into content online, but I welcomed it. Not for fame, not even for recognition. For resonance. Because people needed it. They needed to know they weren't alone. Soon, I started getting invites, panels, podcasts, interviews. I declined most. I wasn't ready to be a figure for something. But then a message came from a nonprofit that worked with financially abused spouses, mostly men, often shamed into silence. They asked me to speak. So I did. I walked into that conference room in a simple black shirt, no notes, no script, and said, I used to think silence was strength. That if I just worked harder, paid more, showed up consistently, the world would reward me. It didn't. It slapped me. And I still stayed silent. I looked around at the men in that room, some older, some barely adults. All of them carrying wounds too polite to be called abuse. Until one day, I continued. I remembered I was allowed to have a voice. They stood and clapped when I finished. Not because I was brilliant, but because I said what most of them had swallowed for years. After that, coaching requests came in. I started small, just a few calls a week, helping people create exit plans, budget templates, emotional boundaries, scripts for hard conversations, step-by-step guides on walking away without blowing up their whole lives. I wasn't just healing anymore. I was helping. One afternoon, Mason walked into my apartment while I was editing episode 12 and just stood there watching me. I looked up. What? He nodded toward the mic. You know you've become something, right? Like what? A mirror, he said. For people who forgot what they looked like. That line stuck with me. That night, I wrote it on a sticky note and pinned it above my desk. You are not what they reduced you to. My name was Ezra Holloway. Once the background, now the voice in the front. And people weren't just listening. They were learning how to live again because I stopped hiding in the silence. The house I left didn't collapse in an explosion. It crumbled the way people do, quietly, in pieces, pretending to hold together long after the rot sets in. I didn't check on Clarissa or her family directly. I didn't need to. Word had a way of finding me now. My podcast had grown past anything I could have expected. Listeners sent updates like lifelines, and before long, I didn't even have to wonder how things were unraveling. I just had to read my inbox. The first signal came from an email. Subject line: I think your ex is losing her house. Attached was a link to a real estate site. I clicked it, not expecting much. But there it was. The address I used to come home to. The condo with the cinnamon-scented candles, the white couch I wasn't allowed to eat on, the gallery wall I hung myself while Clarissa scrolled through Pinterest next to me. Foreclosure, bank-owned property. Price reduced. I stared at the screen, not out of spite, but because it confirmed what I already knew. Without my quiet support, without the stability I brought in ways no one saw, their foundation was gone. The very walls they built their illusion inside had finally caved in. The comments started surfacing under old photos Clarissa hadn't deleted from social media. People asking if she'd moved. If the rumors were true. One particularly blunt user posted, "Funny how you threw your husband out over a lie, and now you can't keep the lights on." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The world had started noticing the cracks on its own. Then came the university update. Brielle officially dropped out. I didn't hear it from her. Of course not. But a college forum shared a farewell message she posted, filled with the kind of faux inspirational fluff only someone dodging accountability could write. Sometimes life forces you to pivot, but I'll always be grateful for the lessons I've learned and the strength I've gained. Not a word about the reason for the pivot. No mention of the lies. No acknowledgement of the recording that destroyed her credibility. Just spin. Mason laughed when I read it aloud to him. Strength, he said, shaking his head. She thinks surviving the consequences of her own actions is growth. I wasn't laughing. Not because I wasn't amused, but because I realized how far I'd come. A year ago, I might have still hoped Clarissa would call me. Maybe ask to talk. Admit what happened. Acknowledge the truth. But now? I didn't want closure from her. I didn't need it. That's when the text came. A number I knew too well. Clarissa. 6 words. I'm sorry. Can we meet? My thumb hovered over the screen. A part of me, the old version of me, flinched. That old ache, trained to respond to her voice, her needs, her regret. I could almost hear it, her pacing around her new apartment, which I imagined was smaller, colder, less adorned. No extra fridge stocked. No utility bills handled in silence. Just her and the version of life she claimed to want, without me. But I didn't respond, because I knew what I'd say if we met. I'd sit across from her and ask the questions she could never answer honestly. Why didn't you believe me? Why did you let them turn me into a villain without blinking? And she'd say she was confused, that she didn't know what to think, that she made a mistake. But here's the thing about mistakes. They happen in the moment. What Clarissa did, that was a decision. One rooted in history, in pattern, in silent agreements about who mattered more. So I let the message sit, unanswered. I archived it. The next day, a producer from a morning show reached out. They wanted to interview me. Said my podcast was starting a necessary conversation about emotional invisibility and financial betrayal. I almost declined. Media attention still made me uneasy, but something about the timing felt poetic. They introduced me on air as Ezra Holloway, creator of Built to Burn and advocate for relational accountability. Funny how life turns. A year ago, I was getting slapped in front of strangers. Now, people asked for my thoughts on healing. After the segment, I walked the city alone for hours. Not because I was restless, but because I felt light. Like the final pieces of something heavy had finally been lifted. Not revenge. Not even vindication. Freedom. I passed by a bookstore on 8th Avenue and stopped at the window. A sign on the glass read, "Your story matters. Someone is waiting for your version of the truth." I smiled. Not because it was about me, but because it was true. I'd spent years buried beneath other people's narratives. Quiet, helpful, present. I let them write my role. The dutiful husband. The responsible brother-in-law. The wallet with a heartbeat. Now I was the author. Not just of my story, but of a movement. One that whispered into headphones across the world, "You're not crazy. You're not weak. You're not alone." When I got back to my apartment, there was a letter in my mailbox. No return address. Just my name on the front. Inside was a handwritten note. "Ezra, I've been listening. Not just to your podcast, but to the silence I created around you. I was wrong. And I don't expect forgiveness. I just hope you keep telling the truth." No signature. But I knew the handwriting. Clarissa. I folded the letter slowly and placed it in a drawer. Not out of anger, but because I'd already forgiven her in the quiet corners of my growth. I just hadn't told her. And I didn't need to. Some stories don't need sequels. Some houses don't get rebuilt. And some apologies arrive too late to matter, but just in time to be understood. It's been almost a year since I walked out of that house with nothing but my wallet and my laptop. Since that slap, that silence, that storm of betrayal. A year since I was painted the villain in a story I didn't write. And now? Now I sit on my balcony every morning, drinking my coffee in peace, looking out over the city I reclaimed, one hard breath at a time. The mornings are quiet here. No one yelling from the other room about forgotten bills. No passive-aggressive notes on the fridge. No whispered conversations that stop the second you enter the room. Just the hum of traffic far below, the birds that always seem to find my windowsill, and the click of my coffee mug on the steel railing. It's the sound of a life I built from the ashes they left me in. My podcast is now on its 32nd episode. Built to Burn has become more than I ever imagined. It's not just a platform, it's a movement. Men from every part of the world write in, their stories layered in heartbreak, silence, and strength they forgot they had. Women too. People who were used, lied to, told they were crazy, dramatic, overreacting until they weren't. Until they found someone who could name what they were going through. And more importantly, someone who made it out the other side. I've done speaking gigs in cities I'd never visited before. Published articles. Sat on panels where people used to look right through me. Now they lean in when I speak, not because I shout, but because I speak plainly. Directly. Honestly. That's what people respond to. I've learned, not volume. Truth. And I still don't yell. Because I never needed to raise my voice to be powerful. Sometimes I still hear Brielle's voice in my head. That recording. That smug confession. The audacity of her manipulation. I hear her laugh sometimes, echoing in the corners of memory I haven't swept clean. Word is, she's still telling people I overreacted. Still spinning the story into something that fits her version of reality, where she's misunderstood, and I'm bitter. Let her. Let her talk. She talked before, and it cost her everything. And me? I didn't have to ruin her. She did that on her own. I don't respond to the comments she leaves under podcast clips on anonymous accounts. I don't answer the cryptic messages from old family group chats trying to reconnect. I don't explain myself to people who saw the truth and still chose the lie. Because when you finally find your voice, you stop performing for people who were never listening. Thea and I still talk sometimes. She updates me occasionally, tells me Clarissa's parents sold their car, then the condo. They're renting now, blaming the economy for everything. Clarissa's working again, at a job she hates, from what I hear. Brielle? She's offline. Radio silent. No more brunch posts or campus selfies. No more digs about me and hashtags. Just silence. And in that silence, I don't hear an apology. I hear consequences. There's a kind of peace that comes with knowing you no longer have to hold the weight of people who only saw you as useful. A peace in looking around your space and knowing no one gets to claim it but you. Some nights, I light a candle on the kitchen counter, just because. Not because I'm trying to impress anyone. Not because Clarissa might walk in and demand ambience. Just because I like the glow. I cook for myself now. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. I season how I want. I eat when I want. I leave dishes in the sink sometimes without worrying someone will use it against me. My life is imperfect, but it's free. A listener once messaged me, "How do you know when you're healed?" And I told them, you'll know when their name no longer tastes bitter in your mouth. When your silence feels full, not hollow. When you don't want them back, not because you hate them, but because you finally love yourself more. That's where I am now. Sometimes I go entire days without thinking about Clarissa. Other times, her name flutters through my mind like a leaf carried by wind here, then gone. I don't miss her. I miss the man I was before her love started to feel like that. I've started mentoring younger men, clients who are trying to walk away from toxic situations or make sense of being abandoned after giving everything. I tell them what no one told me. Love should never cost you your identity. And peace isn't selfish. It's your birthright. Some of them cry on our calls. Some of them sit in silence, jaw tight, hearts open. All of them ask the same thing eventually. How did you come back from it? And I always say, I didn't come back. I moved forward. Because that's the truth of it. There's no going back. Not to that house. Not to that table. Not to the man who kept giving until there was nothing left but resentment in a pressed shirt. I rebuilt. From the ground up. And the version of me who lives here now, who wakes up alone but not lonely, who speaks and is heard, who chooses his peace over someone else's chaos, is not a shadow of who I was. He is the man they couldn't break. People still try to figure out what happened. I've seen the posts, the speculation, the curiosity wrapped in gossip. But I've learned, you don't owe anyone the full story. Not when they were willing to believe the wrong one without asking questions. So I let them wonder. I let them write their versions, while I keep living mine. A few nights ago, I stood on my balcony as a summer storm rolled in, lightning streaking across the sky, thunder grumbling in the distance. I stood barefoot, hands resting on the railing, wind pushing through my shirt. And I smiled, because I remembered who I was before I became what they needed. And I liked the man who came back stronger. I carry nothing now. Not their shame, not their lies, not even the necklace. All I carry is freedom. And it's light. So damn light.